All right, everyone, welcome back to Quick Fix. I am your boy Chris P, and I am joined today by the one, the only Dr. Doug Liebe. What is up, brother?
Hello, good to be here. Good, glad to have someone to talk with for a little bit here and talk about, yeah, I don't know, talk about anything that comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, we caught up a little bit. For the people that don't know, you wouldn't know this, but we caught up a little bit beforehand. And for the people that don't know Dr. Doug right here, Doug, what do you do? In the Call of Duty scene, and then we'll take a little deep dive into your life.
Yeah. So, I mean, currently what I do, I am a data scientist. I work for Lyft, the rideshare company. Um, but for the last three-ish years, I was working with the LA Gorillas parent organization, Cronky Sports and Entertainment. I worked with the Gorillas originally, and then worked more broadly with the team and their other esports ventures in like Valorant, specifically, and Overwatch, the Los Angeles Gladiators. So I was I would say a data analyst for KSE for about 3 years after I got out of my PhD.
Hmm. Interesting. So when you were doing, all your data and whatnot, were you reporting to like, coaches and the GM talking about, best practices and, this person should speed up, this person should slow down? Like, is that what played into it?
It evolved over time for sure. And like who I was providing insights to evolved over time. So when I first started out with KSE before the Guard existed, which is the parent company, back then I was really just working with the Guerrillas Call of Duty team. And at the time when I first started out, I would say my role was, and I think officially I was just an assistant coach. And so like my role was much more face to face with the players, interfacing with the players and the coaches, very rarely interfacing with the GM, and no one outside, no stakeholders outside of that. I'd say I spent every day in practice. I'm scrubbing VODs. I'm watching. I'm collecting data. I still have on my phone like hundreds of pictures of scoreboards from back then when that year we weren't playing. Was that the first year we played on PC? Or no, that would have been when we were still playing on PS4. So in order to have the screenshots for my PC, I would turn to my right, take a picture of the PS4 screen, and then put it back on my screen or whatever, because I didn't have the version on my PC or something like that. I just remember I have like a million pictures of scoreboards from MW1 on my phone still. But yeah, so like back then I was interfacing mostly with the players, like, yeah, like, hey, go faster on this map, hey, we're getting killed on P2 on Hackney Yard, hey, we're like doing this. And then to the coaches, hey, this guy needs to pick it up, like, hey, this guy's been struggling in this role, hey, maybe we should do this. And then like I think more of like the analyst type thing, which is like, what map should we be vetoing? What do we know about other teams? What up and coming players should we be interested in? Stuff like that. I think over time, I got a little more big picture. When I started to work with the other teams, it was pretty much impossible to be in practice every single day, keeping track of the Call of Duty team when I'm also giving some help to Overwatch team and when we get a Valorant team. So like it evolved a little. Then it was mostly coaches, and then I'm talking a lot more to GM or player managers to like make sure that everybody's happy, everybody's on the same page about everything. But it started out with like I know the players, I'm talking to the players. That was my start.
Even if you were in, a couple different titles, you said like Overwatch, Call of Duty, Valorant when it came around. Did you have a favorite? I know you're on a Call of Duty podcast, so that might be a spoiler.
Yeah.
But was it Call of Duty the whole time?
Yeah. So, I mean, my history with Call of Duty certainly goes back the furthest. And also, like, that was my original jumping in point was through Call of Duty. I haven't always been an avid Call of Duty fan. I played Call of Duty growing up. And then when in about 2017, I started watching again around the end of IW, I think when Optic cemented the dynasty was when I started watching it. I was like, oh, this is actually I used to play this game as a kid. I like watched old Nade Shot videos, stuff like that, but like I wasn't like super into it or anything. I remember uh, yeah, uh the really old days Ghost S&D videos and stuff like that. But like I took a big hiatus, came back, started watching COD more, and that's where I sort of was like, wait, there might actually I was now I'm in school for an analytical like doing analytical things. I'm like, wait, maybe there could be something here, combining these two things. But yeah, so I'd say COD was my jumping in point. To be fair, I am horrible at COD. I don't really play. I don't think I've bought any of the last few games even. So then I'll give a little plug to, I've played Overwatch a fair bit. I'm horrible at that as well, but at least I play it the most. So like, yeah, my favorite esport is for sure COD, but like my favorite game to play of the three is definitely Overwatch.
Overwatch is fun as hell. I like so I'm a Call of Duty guy. I've always been a first person shooter guy. Just like my bread and butter. I started off at Counter Strike when I was younger, so I always had a love for Call of Duty. There was nothing better than getting out of elementary school, sprinting back home, firing up the Xbox 360,
Oh yeah.
grabbing a cosmic brownie, sitting down, and just like getting in a private lobby. Like there was nothing better than that. But like till this day, when I get burnt out on Call of Duty, and it usually happens pretty often, because like I'll grind the hell out of ranked play, and I'm like, I need to chill out for a second. What do I do? I was like, all right, I'll go run around as Junkrat in Overwatch and just like, fly around the map and just have a little fun. So Overwatch, like, it's very fun. There's a lot going on there. So at some point, I want to see how you would do it. I want to know how you do your Overwatch analytics, but we're not going to talk about that now. Because that game is like, if your mechanics are on, like, I can't follow it. Like, these guys' mechanics are insane when it comes to
Yeah.
that game.
The
Um,
strategy in Overwatch is very, yeah, like it's, I think there's a lot of nuance to it for sure. Like having worked with the Overwatch team, and like I think the thing that is fun about Overwatch to me is that even when you're terrible, there's strategy even at the lowest levels. I think if you're terrible in COD, like the best thing you can do is just shoot more people, like get more kills. The more kills you get, you're gonna win more games. In Overwatch, even in Silver 1 lobbies, like employing even the tiniest ounce of strategy might help you win a game against a team that's better than you. Because yeah, at least at that level, there's nobody clicking heads with Cassidy or something like that that's just making the game impossible for you. So like, yeah, I don't know. I appreciate about that about Overwatch is like even a really bad player can like make a good strategic. I'm a main tank. I was a main tank even in
ooh.
6v6. Like I liked that I could play Winston. And I literally didn't have to aim. Back then, he didn't even have the charge rifle, so he couldn't even aim. So like when I heard about Winston, I said, all right, sign me up. One trick Winston only. Like you just hold the thing down and it shoots at them if you're just in their general direction. Like
Yeah.
that sounded perfect to me.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's the same with like we'll get into Call of Duty in a second, but I'm in the zone now. But it's like when I used to play Valorant as well. I'd be like, all right, if my shot's not on this day, like I'm not really playing too well, I'm gonna play Sova because I can get information for the team at least. What like my recon dot, like I can get
Yeah.
information and like I can at least provide that way for the team, even though I'm dog shit right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Call of Duty, you just gotta kill more, rotate better, plant the bomb, defuse the bomb. That's just everything you're supposed to be doing. So with Call of Duty, and I know what the answer to this is going to be, but maybe I don't. Being in the Call of Duty space, is that something that you wanted to do since 2017 when you started watching it again? Did you know in that moment like I have something here, I want to pursue this?
Yeah, definitely not. I so yeah, like to go back a little, like I started college in 2013 and I wanted to be a veterinarian. I was pre-vet at Ohio State. I've got my Ohio State shirt on. I yeah, I mean that was literally all I knew. I'd worked at a vet's office from my freshman year of high school on. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. I got in and like yeah, ironically, the thing that led me from animal science, which was my degree, to like doing more like data analytics and then data science was like the start of DraftKings. Like when fantasy daily fantasy sports started to get big, like 2014 ish, I remember was like the first time I like heard about it and made my own account and I started playing PGA or something and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like when I first realized that like you could apply analytics to sports and like get and like yeah, I don't know, I've always been a math person, but like when you could apply that, I was like, okay, this is sort of interesting. So I started to get an interest in like, yeah, okay, maybe I should do this instead. So I pivoted a little. I pivoted away from my pre-vet degree and went to get my PhD doing like data analytics in agriculture. So still working with cows, like cow sheep were my main like studies when I was in school. And so like yeah, I still hadn't even realized. And then I started watching COD. And so the first project I ever did for Call of Duty that like was from an analytical perspective, I was taking a machine learning methods class at Virginia Tech, and it was like some computer vision type class that we are learning some stuff, and I wanted to see if I like understood the material, and I was coding in Python at the time, and I'm like watching COD, and somebody had commented like, well, we don't know the score the whole game. We just see the end score in hardpoint. I'm like, I bet you could write something, just read the screen and just get the hardpoint score for every second of the game and like understand. So it's funny now we take it for granted, like holds and breaks, like back in 2017, 2018, like even if we knew the score, like, oh, this team scored 25 points on that hill, we don't know when in the hill they scored it. Was it the first 25 or the last 25 or something? And it's like, had this idea like, oh, if I just had that information that was just like the time and what the score was for both teams, the time 1 second later and the score for both teams, I bet I could code that up. And I coded it up in like a day or two and posted it. And I was like, or not posted it, I just had it. And I was like, okay, like good. I learned this class was good. Like, and then I realized like maybe I should post this. Yeah, not to get too deep in then, but yeah, like maybe I should. And that's when I first started to like think. But even at that time, I was still thinking, I mean, this is just like a cool hobby. Like data analytics in COD wasn't a career path at the time. That wouldn't come until franchising started, where like teams were hiring like full like coaching staffs, not just a coach. I mean, even yeah, I mean, 2018 did even most teams have a coach? I don't think not. 2018 was just the start of seeing some coaches on teams. Like 2019 was be Black Ops 4 was the first year that most big teams had a coach. So like yeah, at the time there'd be no reason for me to believe that there was a future in esports. Like if you're watching your favorite team play, they don't even have a coach, let alone an analyst. So like yeah, it was very low key to start.
I mean, that's just a very, for the lack of better words, like wild type of progression through your career.
Yeah.
Like I was, hanging out with cows and sheep all day, and then, I'm coding how to, see the exact score and hard point. You should have posted at that time, because not for nothing, like that could have been a product that you sold to, MLG or something at that time or whatever it was. Like
Yeah,
you
so
probably could have made a couple bucks.
yeah, so I mean like there was so like I mean shout out to JP who's the coach of Texas right now. Like he was the godfather of Call of Duty analytics. Like I would have nothing if it weren't for him. And like how I originally like made the jump from just like casual spectator doing projects on the side, just whatever, to like being able to apply it like and get people in the scene to notice me and stuff like that. Like I reached out to him. I think it's like the way I remember it, maybe he'll remember it differently, but like the first time I ever reached out to him was just to point out that he had like made a mistake in one of his videos. He had like clearly just like whatever flipped a number or something like that. But like since I was recording the hill points by second and he was recording that he was hand recording himself the scores of each hill. I knew that just like one of the numbers didn't add up, and I reached out to him and like we went back and forth, and like obviously I don't know, the rest is history now, but like we worked together for years after that, and like yeah, I'd consider him a good friend and like definitely my best friend in the Call of Duty space who like got me all of this stuff. But like reaching out to him about that like opened up a whole new world of like yeah, new contacts, new people who'd be interested in this sort of stuff. And so yeah, I think ironically the first thing I ever posted on the Call of Duty Reddit about the stuff I was doing was not scoreboard reading. It was mini map reading. So I realized that you could track the little triangles in World War II on the map by the color of the team. So the color of the score at the top was the same as the color of the triangles, which is sort of the case now, but not always necessarily the case now because they usually make one team white and the other team dark. But like back then, the two colors of the teams were the two colors of the triangles. And so you could track the triangles around it. So what I did was combine the movement of the triangles with the score. So like basically, where are the triangles right before you're about to get a full 60 on a hard point or something like that? And that was the first post I ever made. And like I mean, even now I see the value in that. Like that was really interesting to be like, look where these triangles set up in a hill on Hackney Yard, or not on Hackney Yard, on London Docks. Like, look how they set up on this hill when they get full 60s versus. So I could show like a heat map, like when they don't get full 60s versus when they do, or whatever. And like that was immediately interesting. And like once I posted that, I mean, like that was the like there was no going back at that point. Like people realized that there was something interesting here. We were getting decent data in World War II as well about like kill locations and stuff. I started getting hooked up with that, which I would have never gotten otherwise. Like that was that was the start. Was like I posted that publicly, and like I, not to ramble too much on this, but like I get not 1,000 but a lot of questions from people asking like how can I do what you did, or when I was doing it, what are you doing now? And I always say post publicly. Like you need to be open to public scrutiny. And like people replied to that and were negative, like they thought I needed to consider this or that or whatever. I never would have thought of those things. I didn't know COD well enough to not know that stuff, but I am where I am now because of all the people who said, no, this is dumb, or no, oh, this is awesome, or whatever. You can't just make your own stuff. I see a lot of people say, like, if I were hired, I would be so helpful for you. Like, show me now.
Yeah.
Don't show me later. Show me now. And like, that's literally what I did. I practiced what I preach in that respect, that like, I would be nowhere if it weren't for me reaching out to JP and saying, hey, you flipped this number. Me posting on Reddit, which I do not go on anymore. I wouldn't recommend to
Place
anyone.
is the Wild
Wouldn't
West.
I wouldn't tell my worst enemy to go on COD Reddit. But like, yeah, going on Reddit and posting for the Sharks, like going on Twitter, making my Twitter bigger, like stuff like that is the only reason. Like I joke that when I got the job with LAG, I don't even know if they knew I had a PhD. Like I don't think anyone ever asked. Like that was not what they knew me from. They knew me from the tweets, from the Reddit. Like they're like, hey, you're the guy from the thing. Like not, hey, what's your degree? What are your references or whatever? Like, yeah, people ask me like, is this degree good enough to get the like a job like yours? Like,
I don't
sure. Like
know.
it could be anything. Your degree could be in, yeah, whatever. Like, but if you've got cool shit online, like, good enough.
Dude, it's the same. It's the same way with like content, right? Where on my end, I'll have people contact me. They're like, "Oh yeah, like I could be an asset for editing." I was like, "Oh, cool, like send me what you have." They're like, "Well, I haven't really done anything, but like I know what I'm doing." It doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. It doesn't work that way. Like the internet is your portfolio now. If you want to make it a good portfolio or a bad portfolio, that is totally on you. But it's a good place to have a record of things that you've done, get noticed by people that you don't have a direct line to. It's a life changing thing, obviously, but like it's right place, right time, doing cool stuff, loving what you do, and people are gonna notice the passion and the work.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So when you have been doing, so that was like your big kind of oh shit moment, like I have something here. Nowadays, as you're doing these analytics, obviously you're trying to improve and everything like that. And before I go any further, you heard him say DraftKings and daily fantasy. Stay tuned to the end because there's big news coming. But are there any analytics that you do now that no one's really doing? This is really important. For instance, for the sake of the story, before I knew you, personally, before I even spoke to you, I had a graphic of yours pop up on my Twitter, and it was one about Reese Vivid, and it was about his pacing and how fast he moves. I was like, wait, I've never seen someone really go into like the pacing of these players. This is super interesting. But is there any of those like one-off or like weird things that you see that really tie into how a player performs?
Yeah, I think, I mean, a sort of similar to my role in Call of Duty as I grew, like my opinion on a lot of stats has changed a lot over time. So like when I first came in, I mean, yeah, when I started working with LAG, like you could basically compare my opinions about Call of Duty 1 to 1 to the COD comp Reddit or whatever. Because like I didn't know anything else. Like yeah, KD high, player good. KD bad, drop that player. Like that was what I knew. And like so I knew that like I could provide some insights into collecting the data better. So at that point I developed a whole suite of like we can scrape the data from our scrim so we can have all this data. But like once you have, I mean, that's what I would call data engineering, or I think anyone would call that data engineering, like collecting the data. But like data analysis is what you do with that data. And at that point, when I joined the team, data analysis for me was I take all those scrims, say this player bad, like point 0.8 in scrims on Hackney Yard, he bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, that was literally how I started. As soon as I start to watch the games from a different lens and like talk to coaches, talk to players about why are they doing poorly in this game, I realize immediately, like, I mean, the low hanging fruit is that like KD is not as interesting on its own as anyone in the scene might suggest or whatever. And I think most people harp on that at this point. And it's not a coincidence that anyone who's been involved in the competitive side of the scene would say that, and most people that haven't been involved don't say that or would argue that like KDs are very important. I think it's just telling that like the people that are on the inside all recognize it to some degree or another. So I mean, like the big one is like, yeah, okay, KD on its own is probably not that interesting or whatever. I think pacing is interesting just because not necessarily that pacing on its own is like a great stat or anything. It's that we've been thinking about pacing incorrectly for a long time. And that was something I realized once you start to watch the game is that it takes you 7 to 8 seconds from the time that you die on average on an average map to get into another gunfight. I mean, it's changed over the years. It sometimes bigger maps, but whatever. Yeah, like what was the map last year? The Bokage, like it was 2 seconds or whatever.
Mhm.
But like that has changed a lot over time, but it's always big. The time between your getting a kill and your next engagement is always going to be shorter, almost always going to be shorter than the time it would take you from the death. So the more you die, the slower you will look from an engagements per minute perspective. Like it was a big deal when we started getting in Modern Warfare 1, they put this time of the game in the top right or top left of the scoreboard. And it was a nice thing to have. I mean, like to know the actual time of the score. Because, yeah, kills per game is the most useless statistic of all time. Because the game, yeah, if Atlanta wins 250-5 and they all have 15 kills per game, does that mean they're bad players? No. So like getting the time was huge, but then people immediately assumed, and I mean me too, that like, okay, take the kills plus the deaths, divide by the time, you get engagements per minute. That's how fast players are. Well, it just made players that got a lot of kills look really fast. You started to see like AR players that were like dying 5 times in a game looking like the fastest players in the lobby, but that's just because they never die. They never have to come off spawn, so like they don't have to spend the time coming off spawn. If you plot out the, yeah, basically the conclusion I came to is if there's correlation between how many times you died and your engagements per minute, then engagements per minute isn't a measure of how fast you are, it's how many times you died. And so like pace is just my attempt to like uncorrelate the two. Pace is not correlated with how much you die. And so ironically in the last 2 years, we've like the teams have access to like private data now about the players, which measures something called speed, which is how many units per second of the game they move, like how fast they move across the map in the times only when they are alive. And so I mentioned in the article that I wrote about pace, like I had access to that last year, and the correlation between pace and speed is much higher than engagements per minute is with speed, which is basically was great for me to see, to realize, okay, I was on the right track here. Like pace does better explain the speed of a player. It's not perfect still, because like, yeah, a player can be really fast and run to a point and then stop there and he's up in their face already and then he gets a kill. And does the fact that he stopped before he gets the kill mean that he's slower? No, it just means that he got to that spot faster than another player would have who maybe could have run through and never stopped moving because they got there at the same time. So, but yeah, I digress. Pace is very interesting. I think the other thing that is very important to me now is that I've tweeted this sometimes, but KD is as a team stat. Like KD, not only do we think about it like we use it too generally for everything, but like we think about like especially in respawn, KD is just as much the product of a good teamwork as it is like the cause of team success. So like a lot of people would say like you win a lot of gunfights, you get a lot of kills, you win a lot of games. Well, what about the fact that if you're playing the game really smart and you're winning a lot of games, it makes getting kills really, really easy. Like that's something that you realize as soon as you start watching scrims, you're in there a lot. You realize the game is just easier when you play it smart. Like the smarter you are, the better the game, the more fun the game, or like more fun you'll have. But yeah, the more kills you'll get. And like because of that relationship, I think we think of it, okay, maybe kills don't directly equal wins, but we don't go far enough to say that maybe wins equals kills. Like maybe wins goes back the other way. When you're winning games, kills are easier. Like I would wager that players win gunfights. They get in gunfights that they never even get into when they're losing games. Like they get into harder. Like I mean, like speaking as a Gorillas fan and Gorillas team, like I've seen a lot of like beatings happen where it's just like we never none of the gunfight, if you just freeze framed on every gunfight that we get into in a 50-point club game, none of them are easy. It's not that they're losing them because they're bad players, that they're bad at shooting their gun. It's just hard gunfights. Like when you're not playing and you're behind on rotations and stuff, every gunfight feels impossible. And so like I would urge people to think about KD like that it's not that KD causes wins or that it doesn't. It's maybe wins cause KD a little bit as well.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear that because, part of Boston Preach as well is Doug Sensamartin. And he preaches up and down the river all the time. It's just like, KD does not show the full story on how good a player is. And people also talk about that as well. And me knowing, Doug Martin, the kid will do whatever it takes to win, even if that, makes him drop a point 0.3 that game. If he drops 7 kills that game, as long as he gets the win, he's cool with that. And I think that might be like an older, mindset for some of the players where it's like anything that it takes to win, I don't care how I look. I feel like the scene as a whole is kind of pivoting to like I want to look good, I want my stats to look good. But I wish there was a way to show the intangibles. So, maybe that's your
Same.
next project right there.
Yeah, I think especially, I mean, like I 100% agree that like old school players will think that KD is less important because back when the games played slower and there was no sliding, there was none of this other stuff. Like, I mean, yeah, the game, like you watch old games, the games just look slow. Like each kill is more important. Yeah, you can die 10 times in a game, but one kill you get could score your team an entire full 60. But in these games, and part of the reason why it's less popular of a mindset now is that like these games are so fast. Like you might have to win 4 or 5 gunfights to get a full 60 right now in like some of these hardpoint games that we play. So it becomes tough. I 100% agree with my fellow Doug here that like if you're winning games, KD shouldn't matter at all. Like that means that whatever you did was enough to win. And like the more you win by, the better. The more you win by, the less KD matters. But I will say that like I do think that and like the reason that like why what makes superstars superstars, like there are superstars on teams that don't always win. They can get kills in positions that you won't be expected to get kills in, and anytime you have a man advantage, that makes you not have to play as perfect of COD. Like if you're up 4v3 all the time because a guy in your team's a walking 1.5, it just makes it easier to play perfect or like imperfect COD and still win, I guess. If you got a guy in your team dropping a point 0.6, you are playing you have to play perfect COD to win. Can you still win? 100%. And that's why when you have a point 0.6 and you win, no one should say anything about it. I will defend my fellow Doug Martin here and say like if you're dropping anything and you win, it is unfair to go in the comments and say you dropped a point 0.5 or whatever. Like doesn't matter. But you won the game. Like
Yeah.
but yeah, it is certainly the opposite can be true though, is that you lose and you've got a guy in your team dropping a point 0.5. Anyone in ranked knows this. Like it's just hard to play. You have to play perfect COD. Nobody's playing perfect COD these days. Nobody is, not even the best teams. And so like, yeah, it sort of brings up another point that I learned from watching a lot of COD and stuff is that like COD, no one plays perfect COD. COD is which team makes less mistakes. Like it's how close to perfect can you play. And so when you're getting point sixes, you gotta play even closer to perfect. The one error could completely screw you out of a game where like, yeah, if you've got a guy in your team who's just a walking 1.4, like he basically gives you 4 get out of jail free cards, which is like him winning an insane 1v2 on point to get scrap time so that you can all rotate or something like that. And like there is something to be said for that.
Oh yeah, and like I also want to go on the record and say yes, like to me, KD does matter in certain situations where like you're playing control. You can't just be throwing lives. Like you have to play your life and know when to play your life, when to know to not take a stupid gunfight. But I agree with both Dougs on this one where it doesn't paint the full picture. So with that being said, is there someone in the league right now that you think deserves more credit that people don't give them because of stats?
Hmm, that's a tough one. I don't
Damn, get
typically like
stumped,
to
Doug. Get
yeah,
stumped.
yeah, I don't like to name drop too. I mean, I do think that yeah. No, I mean, like, I think the obvious one right now is, I mean, well, two examples of it right now, Hixie and Ghosty, like both players that come in with poor stats, but were winning in challengers, come in and then like do incredibly well. Like, I think people that are hounding Ghosty for whatever his KD was at this event when he's getting second places, it goes back to the argument I just made, which is anytime you're winning, like they won everything except the championship game. Like it's unfair to go in the comments and say this player had this KD in the championship game when they lost. Like he's getting his team to second overall. What's your team's players doing or whatever? So like I'll defend that for sure. I think, but it, to Ghosty's credit, especially, like I think people are like, I mean, Optic has been undeniable recently. So like I think people are coming around. I think Hixie's the same sort of thing though. Like he's been a guy who's won things at every level, comes up, wins a major, and like still people are like, and yeah, it's just tough. Like what do you do with a guy who's dropping point eights or less, and then you have a little cold streak or something? Like does that? Yeah, I feel for those players for certain. Like it's a tough business. Like yeah, because if they had a point 0.9, would the game be easier? 100%. Like, but would not having him on the team delete so many intangibles that the team needed that they'd be worse off than if he dropped a point 0.9 and stopped calming? Who knows? Like
Yeah.
that's a good question. Like, so yeah, I guess those are definitely they're a little easy cherry pick examples, but for sure. And like it is also easy that both of them have either won or come in second multiple times this year in majors too. So like I don't have to, yeah, they're not hot takes or anything that those guys are doing a great job for their teams.
Yeah, Dan's a really good kid. He played for Boston Academy for a bit. He was on the team with Doug, Kremp, Shawnee, and himself. So that was their four right there. And ever since being the kid's a class act. Lives, breathes, eats cod. Was always very vocal. Always trying to improve. So shout out to him. I'm glad to see the success that kid's having. Very, very good dude. So I want to start, playing on the line a little bit of why we're here. So before we do that, we'll start moving in a little bit. When it comes to your analytics and how you use those for your daily fantasy and stuff like that, what's usually your mindset going into like, a competition that day or a tournament, whatever they call them, contest that day? Do you feel like you have something that other people don't? Like, do you look at 10 games in the past, 5 games in the past? What do you do going into those?
Yeah. So, I mean, I should preface to say, like, we're going to talk a bit about daily fantasy here, DraftKings specifically for this question, but like Prize Picks, is also daily fantasy. And I should say, like, I am very new to this specific Call of Duty DraftKings space. Like I mentioned, I've been playing DraftKings on and off since 2013, 2014-ish. And like, yeah, I have friends, the best man at my wedding has a fantasy NHL DFS podcast that he's been doing for years and years. I do all their player shot prop models for NHL I have my own shot prop models for NHL. I have breathed the daily fantasy space, but Call of Duty daily fantasy is very new to me. So like everything that I'm doing is coming at it from this new, like this fresh perspective. Like I'm just saying, how can, yeah, I don't have the secrets here, but what do I know and what can I apply? I think my process right now, especially with DraftKings, like I'm learning how the rules impact the game. And so like, what do I have that not everyone has is like, my first thing that I want to know is like, let me get the full picture of what's going on here. How, like, the first question I asked was how correlated are some of these stats to each other? Like you get a bonus if your player doesn't play all 5 games. You get 5 extra points if they don't play the game 5, and 25 extra points if they don't play 4 or 5. And so, like, how do those correlate with if he has a really good game 1, they're more likely not to be playing game 5 because they win game 1, the series might be over faster. Like, my first thought is not which players are underpriced, which player is good, which player is bad. Is like, how does the scoring system impact who I should be playing? And then so like the other nuances of Call of Duty DraftKings in general is like you get a captain, which is 1.5 times the cost, but also 1.5 times the points. What's the best strategy around how I should be playing a captain? Like this would be regardless of what sport we're playing. I want to know why does captaining matter? Who should I be captaining? A big question I had originally is like, how soft is the pricing on the players? Because yeah, if the pricing is really tough, you're never going to be able to play a really high price guy at captain because you won't have any money left over for everyone else. But Call of Duty is extremely soft pricing. I mean, you can basically fit anyone you want because one of your slots is a team slot, and those are really, really cheap. So to me, it's like, yeah, I'm a meta strategy person first and foremost. I think like projection systems can help get you the last bit of the way there. But if you're coming in just saying this guy's good, this guy's bad, or whatever, like I think you're missing the forest for the trees. Like you're missing that, like, unless you make good construction, how many players should I have from each team in my lineup? What's the best allocation? If I'm playing the superstar on a team, does it make sense to play the number 2 guy on that team as well? Or am I hoping that the superstar goes off and the number 2 guy doesn't need to do very much? Like I'm thinking about stuff like that. Not, yeah, I not that I couldn't care less, but like it's my last thought is, well, what's the projection like for this game for this player? I'm looking at, oh, is this team going to win this game? Like, how good have they been in search as a whole? Like, and I think that like even that much has been like very interesting. And like, yeah, I think that's like the place to start.
Is that the same thinking when it comes to prize picks? Obviously, there's a little bit of a difference. One's fantasy points compared to like play a prop parlays, if you would, where it's like over and under kills. Probably a little different of a process, but of course, is that first one for you? Are they going to win this? Like, how long are these maps actually going to go?
Yeah. So I will say that I see Prize Picks and DraftKings as very different competition. So on DraftKings, you're competing against other players. DraftKings just takes a percentage of the money that everyone enters, but you're competing against other players. So there's always going to be this game theoretical aspect of it, which is who are other people going to play? If I play Dashy at captain, but everyone else also plays Dashy at captain, I'll be in a worse spot, even if Dashy was the best player on the slate. I better off maybe fading him is what we would say, but like things like that, there is this game theoretical aspect. Also, the salaries make it so you can't make every lineup. You don't have to worry about playing anyone in your competition who has Dashi, Hydra, Pred, and a BZ all on their team or something like that. And so like there become these things. Prize Picks is very black and white. Will a player get more or less than this many kills? And like that is to me is just a modeling problem. Like yeah, you if you like this is just my personal opinion, but if you're doing Prize Picks and you're not considering like if you're not either modeling or looking at like long run statistical averages for the players, you're just I don't know if you're throwing money away, but I would disagree strongly that that's a smart way to proceed. Like it should be very analytical. There's no opinions here. Yeah, there's no, if I play this guy, but then this other guy does well, I'll still be in a good spot or whatever. Prize Picks is just one player. Just pick the player. Do they do well or do they do not do well? And so then you need to understand like what the kill generating process, like what makes a player get more or less kills than what the Prize Picks line is at. And so to me, like, I mean, you alluded to it, but the biggest thing is how long will the game go? Like, kills per game is a useless stat on its own. But, like, if you know how long the game is and you know how many kills per minute they get, now we're getting somewhere. And so, like, Prize Picks is a whole different beast to me, like, very separate. So I said on DraftKings, you're competing against other players. On Prize Picks, you're competing against Prize Picks. Prize Picks is putting a line down, and if you put money on one side of it and everyone puts money on one side because they made a bad line, Prize Picks loses money. You and your friends who all put money on it don't lose money because of that. And so like it's a different game. Prize Picks is competing against you. On DraftKings, they say, hey, we'll make soft pricing. This Dashy's only $9,000 today, and it doesn't matter. DraftKings makes whatever 7-10% off the top regardless. So like I do think you need to approach them very differently. I'm basically putting a wall of my knowledge between the two, and like I think very little from one is applicable to the other.
Yeah. So with that being said, I think it's a perfect time to say it. So going forward, there's going to be another standalone product, within the Quick Fix podcast family, and we're going to be mainly Doug. I'm just going to be here for moral support. Going to be arming you with all the information that you need to make, responsible. Not, obviously be responsible, but arm you with all the information to make the most informed lineup that you can on DraftKings, Prize Picks, whatever daily fantasy that you do use. But it's going to be a very analytical approach. So Doug, I'll kind of let you take the floor a little bit on what you're expecting to kind of cover on that, because you're the big numbers guy. I'm just the guy with the funny accent who's going to be here for the ride.
Yeah, no, I think like I don't think that we've nailed down exactly how we want this yeah, this other content to come. So like yeah, we're going to play it by ear. We're going to go with the flow here. But I think the general idea is that yeah, this is going to be something to help arm arm bettors, arm people who want to play DraftKings or Prize Picks or another fantasy, arm them with the information they need to make smarter decisions. So like this product is for you if you are someone who's playing Prize Picks or DraftKings already, but you feel like your process maybe I just called you out with my last little bit there about how you decide who you're going to pick on Prize Picks, and you feel like, well, maybe I do want to just like add a little more. A little more can't hurt. Like this is for someone who's maybe interested. Like this was me when DraftKings came out originally, like when it became popular. It's like I want to play, but only if I'm going to be like smart about it. I know that people can get sucked into this. So like if you're someone like I want to play DraftKings, like it seems like a fun game and like I have a game theoretical mind, but like I don't know where to start. I don't know what like we want. I want this to be a source, yeah, the starting point when we meet before the weekends to talk about the upcoming slates. Like this is the time where yeah, we can give you some tools to help you fight that weekend slate. Like and so yeah, it's less going to be about specific picks and more about how are we thinking about the game. And like I'm going to be learning right along with everyone who listens or partakes, and like I'm very open to feedback, criticism, whatever is, because yeah, I haven't played Call of Duty DraftKings specifically. Like if there are things I'm finding new things out all the time, and so like yeah, let's learn together on this. Like but I do think that I have a fair number of strategical pieces of advice that I think would be helpful, and like things that I can help us all keep in mind every week. It can be hard sometimes when you're building new lineups. You're like plug some guys in, but like we let's create some tenets. Let's think about some things that we should be thinking about every single week, every single time, regardless of the slate, regardless of the pick.
Hell yeah. So there you guys have it. So going forward, you're going to get some really good stuff, really good insight. It's going to be a good time, good vibes. Maybe guests will come on. We'll see how it goes. But, we're going to play it by ear, have a good time in the process, and, just chat shit if you would. All right. So that's the big news. So we're coming up on, the minute, the 40th minute. So probably going to start wrapping it up here. You guys got a good insight into Dr. Doug over here. Some call him Dr. Love. Yeah, Doug, you want to plug all your stuff before I, land the train?
Uh, yeah, feel free to check out my stuff on Twitter. I mean, that's basically the only thing that, or that's where I post most of my stuff, at Doug Liebe, Liebe as in boy, E. I Yeah, most of the stuff that I post, some is going to be starting to be more fantasy related, but I also post, I have models for predicting all the game outcomes as well. So I'm posting about strength of schedule. I'm posting about upcoming matchups. I'm posting about, I should have something either today or tomorrow about every team's chances to make champs and chances to win champs based on the current rosters and current form. So, I mean, Boston is a great example of a team. They're right on the edge right now, and they're a team that's going to make a move and try to improve their chances. I would have Boston as a low chance to win champs with a high chance to make champs. And so Boston is a team that's saying, okay, let's try to increase that chance of us winning champs too. So I'm going to have something about that here soon. But yeah, I post stuff about anything, anything stats related that I think is interesting. I'm posting it on Twitter. Happy to take feedback or questions or requests, whatever, anything you want.
Damn, I can't believe it. We're gonna tank your credibility because we're gonna make champs and then we're gonna win champs and it's
Well,
sorry.
if
I'm
you do
sorry,
that
man.
now, it'll be great. I'll say, hey, look, yeah, you saw the writing on the wall and said, hey, we need to do something. A
Yep.
lot of teams out there that aren't doing anything right now.
Yep.
Certainly makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder. All right, well that'll do it. I am Chris. I'm here every week. This is Doug. This is the Quick Fix, and we'll see you on the next one.